Swadika. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the third webinar of Food Ingredient Asia 2020, which is supposed to be at JI Expo in this September. However, with the pandemic effect, we have to postpone the show to December, which we now watching for the situation happening in Indonesia, whether it will get better and ready for us to run the show or not. I am really excited to be at the exhibition hall to meet all of you again. For today, the digital projects that we are going to run will be our third webinar to engage the community of food and beverage industry in Indonesia and to around the world. With the first episode, we met with Pak Adi Lukman. He shared already what's happening in Indonesia right now. And with second episode, with the new normal life sharing by Dr. Pisit Thammawithi. Now come to the session of our expert again from Indonesia to share his expertise, his worldwide experience, as he is the vice chairman of Codex as well. And he also a teacher for many of us here in the call, in the webinar here. He has very well experience and keep supporting our Food Ingredient Asia since we first started in Indonesia in 2010. And he is kind of a spokesperson of CFA Center in Indonesia. May I invite you to learn with us on the lesson learned from COVID-19 for food and beverage industry. Our guest speaker today is Professor Dr. Puriyatno Haryadi. I call him Professor Poo, so you guys can call the same. And now he is senior scientist for CFA Center in Indonesia. And of course, he is at the University of Bogor Agricultural, which is we call IPB. In this seminar, we have our key sponsor, ADM and Fibersol. So thank you for supporting with us, and any customer interested to join our digital platform, please feel free to contact us. Now it's time to start our lesson learned from Dr. Poo, please. Assalamu alaikum, doctor.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you very much for the craft. Good afternoon, good morning, or good day for everyone, depending on where you are. First, I would like to share my slide first. Okay, so again, thank you for joining this webinar, and also thank you for having me. The title of my talk today is about the lesson learned from the COVID-19 for the food industry. This is the outline of my presentation. First, I will be briefly mention about the COVID-19 in general, and then what is the impact of COVID-19 on food security and especially on the food safety. And then I will close by identifying several lessons that need to be learned so that we can be better prepared for the future event. I will start by stating the fact that on March of 11, 2020, WHO, World Health Organization, has declared the outbreak of COVID-19 as a pandemic. The spread of the disease, the COVID-19 disease, continues since then. And as of now, June 18, 2020, COVID-19 has spread to more than 216 countries and territories, with more than 8 million confirmed cases and more than 439,000 confirmed deaths globally. So this is a really very sad and challenging time. So far, expert has indicated that there are two main roles of infection. The main mode of transmission is through the contact person to person. This occurs when infected person with or without symptoms cough or sneeze. And infection can also occur even at a lower risk when a person touches a surface they are contaminated with virus particles. And then these people will touch their eyes, nose, and mouth so that they will get infected as well. So one of the main policy of the government around the world to reduce the transmission of the disease is to develop a protective measures to slow the spread of the viruses and prevent hospital from becoming overwhelmed. This is popularly known as the flattening of the curve. This is commonly done by way of minimizing movement of the people, encouraging people to stay home, to work from home, and to study from home. So the lockdown policy, what's so-called lockdown policy, is widespread. And essentially, the whole world now is still very much in isolation. People are staying at home, teleworking, and so on. With this policy, clearly there is a need to take into account its wider impact to the other sectors, especially to the agriculture and food sector. In this policy, some countries even ordered the closure of national border and also the closure of business activity. COVID-19 certainly has impacted almost all aspects of human life and industrial sector globally, including the food and agricultural sector. The impact occurs in several scenarios. First, COVID-19 has caused shortage of labor to produce and process food. This may be due to several reasons, such as producer or worker in the agriculture and food sector become sick, or worker mobility are limited by lockdown policy, for example, or the worker that are worried about being exposed to COVID-19 so that they may choose not to work. All of this situation may reduce the capacity of the food system to produce food. Number two, the second impact, the potential disruption of COVID-19 is associated with a transport restriction that may hamper the food logistic, blocking the food delivery, for example. This may also have impact on warehouse, distribution, and retail sector, especially in the area affected by COVID-19. So that this condition may cause delay and or even cancellation of order, disrupting the supply of food as well. Number three, COVID-19 may also cause increased struggle for farmers to access market because of the travel limitation and so on. And this situation in many cases also cause food to be wasted. USDA estimated that about 30% to 40% of food actually goes to waste, but in this kind of situation, pandemic situation, the number is likely to be higher because of the pandemic. And lastly, COVID-19 pandemic may also decrease the supply of perishable commodity. This condition may also have a serious impact, especially on the ability of food system to provide safe, nutritious, and high quality of food for the population. This supply of safe and nutritious food is important so that the population has a good endurance to fight COVID-19 itself. So as advised by the health authorities such as the WHO, eat variety of food, plenty of vegetables and fruit are essential to boost the immune system. So in this situation of COVID-19 pandemic, we really do not want to see the decreasing supply of perishable produce such as veggie and fruit, because this may cause the progression of the pandemic by weakening the immune system of the individual, reduce the ability of individual to prevent and fight COVID-19. So overall, the impact of COVID-19 to food supply is really significant and unprecedented. This may create an emergency situation such as food shortage. We don't want to see that, and food shortage may even further trigger the consumer of panic buying. In this situation, even if the food is available, the shortage may also drive the price of food to increase. Again, certainly we don't want to see this food shortage happening. And obviously, the impact of COVID-19 on food supply need to be carefully mitigated, and that ensuring the availability of food for the population by ensuring the well-functioning of food system is a must. And this is where the food industry has a very important role to play in this aspect. Talking about the food industry and food availability, then we need to be concerned about the food safety. As stated by FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, if it is not safe, then it is not food. It means that food has to be safe. It means that safety is a prerequisite of food. So first thing first, food has to be safe. Fortunately, with respect to COVID-19, risk assessment conducted by various authoritative food institutions in the world shows that it is very unlikely that people can get COVID-19 from food or food packaging material, meaning that COVID-19 is not foodborne disease. This is the conclusion by US FDA, that currently there is no evidence of food or food packaging being associated with transmission of food. Very much the same conclusion also issued by EFSA, European Food Safety Authority, mentioning that no evidence that food is a source or transmission route of coronavirus. Similarly, assessment by Canadian Food Inspection Agency also mentioning the same thing, no evidence to suggest that food is a likely source or route of transmission of the virus. And also from Australia and New Zealand also come up with very much the same conclusion. And from international agency, especially from FAO and WHO, the conclusion is also the same, saying that it is highly unlikely that people can contract COVID-19 from food or food packaging. There is a link that you can later on click to find out more about that. However, food safety can be significantly compromised by this situation because of so many scenarios here. Scenario number one is because of the worker shortage. The worker shortage, especially the worker who run or who responsible for the food safety program in the food industry, may potentially have impact on the food safety itself. Number two, on the transport restriction due to the quarantine measures. This could trigger food safety issues in so many ways. First, if it is transportation, if it is transporting highly perishable food, such as milk, meat, fish, or other fresh produce, delay of transportation may obviously provide some problem associated with food safety. And also, if the transportation is transporting the ingredient, including, for example, the cleaning and sanitizing agent for the food industry, then delaying such important ingredient may also have a consequence on food safety as well. Number three is on increasing demand. We know that for some specific food item, we witnessed increasing demand during the pandemic, especially the shelf-stable food product, for example, and also some of the food that are associated with health functionality. So increased demand may force the food industry to increase the production and also to increase the speed of processing line, for example. This situation will making it harder to control food safety hazard, especially with worker shortage. So we can imagine there's a potential problem as well associated with the food safety that we will be facing. Number 4 is because of lack or reduced inspection and audit. As we know that the COVID-19 is also impacting the national food control system, which forced them to reduce, for example, the number of inspection and also the number of audit. So this again may pose some problem later on. And lastly, is because of the new way of doing things. During the working from home period, people has shifted to, for example, food delivery or takeout, which can present unprecedented food safety risks or challenges if it is not properly managed and monitored. So what are the lessons learned? Now I would like to present some of the lessons learned that we can take so that we can use that lesson learned to upgrade our system and practices so that we can be in a better position and more equipped for the similar future event. The first lesson is about the importance of back to basic, which is strengthening the foundation of food safety management system. In other words, establishing a better food safety culture. This is very important one. And first thing first, it is about hand washing. Hand washing has been emphasized repeatedly as one of the preventive measures to minimize the spread of COVID-19. Actually, as we know, hand washing has become an integral element of food safety program in the food processing industry for so long time. And in the COVID-19 pandemic situation, hand washing has found new meaning and new aspect of importance. Hand washing is very important from two sides at least. First, from the worker side, hand washing is part of the self-protection, part of the effort to prevent COVID-19 spread. In this case, hand washing can be seen as one of the elements of work or occupational safety. From the public health point of view, hand washing also means protecting others from the spread of disease. Second, from the consumer side, hand washing is part of the food safety assurance, which means it is related to ensuring the safety of the product and ensuring safety of the consumer who will be consuming that product. So that is a new element of importance in terms of hand washing. For this reason then, the food industry needs to establish training and education program, raising awareness about the importance of hand washing. In addition, the industry needs to ensure the availability of adequate hand washing facilities, complete with running water, soap, clean cloth, and or tools for drying hand, as well as information on proper hand washing procedure. So this is a very, very important. So it is important for the food industry to take this momentum and to utilize it and then try to maintain and incorporate it, the practice of hand washing that has been established so far into the food safety culture of the food industry in the future. Still in the back to basic element, the second back to basic lesson is about the importance of personal hygiene. Personal hygiene should have become part of the culture of every person engaged in the food business. We know that. Similar to that of hand washing, personal hygiene is also one of the important measures to prevent the spread of COVID-19. So in this case, the COVID-19 pandemic also highlight and give more meaning to personal hygiene. Not only that personal hygiene is important in ensuring food safety, but also at the same time, it is very important for work safety as well. And also from the public health point of view, it is very important to prevent the spread of the disease. Each food industry must review how the personal hygiene program in their industry, and also need to stress the importance of personal hygiene by highlighting elements related to virus control, especially. For example, avoiding touching the face, mouth, nose, and eyes, including ethics of sneezing and coughing. The third aspect of the back to basic lesson learned is regarding the good manufacturing practices and prerequisite program and also preventive measure. We know that this program are essential foundation for the food industry to be able to produce safe, nutritious, and good quality of food. As we know, good manufacturing practice are basic operational and environmental conditions required to produce safe food. Other prerequisite programs such as pest control program, raw material control program, production control, sanitation and maintenance program need to be enhanced and strengthened. In this pandemic condition, there is a special need to frequent and effective cleaning and sanitation, for example, need to be stressed with special attention to the frequently touched surfaces, such as door handle, side of equipments, and so on. So this lesson learned about back to basic emphasize the importance of building a new culture of food safety by more disciplined implementing program of GMP, prerequisite program, and also preventive measure. Still at the back to basic lesson is on human capital. So the fourth aspect is very important. This fourth aspect of basic is very important. And first thing first, keeping all workers in the food production and supply chain healthy and safe is very critical. This is a must thing to do. And this is critical to surviving the current pandemic. In the context of COVID-19, support for the employee to properly respond to the pandemic is essential. This may include, for example, providing extra meal, ensuring that they have opportunity to do the exercise, for example, as appropriate, so that they can improve and maintain and improve the immune system of the staff. And also providing personal protective equipment as appropriate, such as face covering and masks, gloves, and others, so that the staff and or employee can perform their duty effectively and safely. Implementation of personal health and wellness checking is also very important in maintaining staff healthiness. As a golden rule, we know that any employee who has illness must be excluded from any operation which may be expected to result in such contamination. Employee must be instructed to report such health condition to their supervisor. So with healthy worker, the food industry can function effectively so that it will be capable of adopting and implementing food safety management program to ensure that the food they produce are safe, nutritious, and of high quality. The second lesson learned, the important one, is related to the consumer. One important element of food safety plan is to know who are the consumer of the product we produce. Most of the food produced by industry are sold to the general public, obviously, but there are also certain type of food that are produced specifically for a certain population that are sensitive or vulnerable, especially the YOPI population, the YOPI population, the young, the old, the pregnant women, and also the immunocompromised group of population. Food industry also need to know how much of the Yapi population is consuming their product. Regarding the vulnerable group of consumer, industry need to be careful when designing plan and making decision regarding food safety of their product. As it is known with the COVID-19 that the most sensitive group is the elderly one, especially those who have precondition related to heart disease, respiratory problem like asthma and also diabetes. So in this condition of the COVID-19, food product or food industry who deal with such consumer need to have a special attention, meaning that the food industry has to ensure that they have a system to address to target group of the consumer, and that they have a checklist to ensure that the relevant procedure and processes are met with utmost sincerity. Number 3 is about the need for industry to establish an emergency team or a crisis team. This crisis team or emergency team is to ensure that all people not only have the same understanding, but also have the same response as planned by the emergency team. The food industry should have reviewed and developed the preparedness program to deal with emergency. The industry must have a plan for what to do in an emergency situation, such as if there is a hurricane, for example, power failure, for example, flooding, and so on. And now it is time for the food industry to develop a document of food safety program for COVID-19 pandemic. Specifically, in the condition of this pandemic, industry must follow the protocol to prevent the spread of COVID-19. For example, regarding the physical and social distancing, or the production of process with limited or small number of workers. This is in anticipation of increased number of absent workers because of the illness, for example. So scheme of emergency need to be prepared for that. Production planning in this emergency situation is mainly to adapt the production process by promoting self-protection for workers, by following the precautionary principles suggested by competent authority, especially with respect to, for example, washing hands, avoiding crowd, practicing physical distancing, carrying out the disinfection of surface and public facility, and so on. For this, it is recommended that the food industry be aware and observe and follow the guideline that has been developed, for example, by national or international food safety authority, such as those of WHO, FAO and WHO. So this is a very good guideline, the COVID-19 and food safety guidance for food business. Number 4, nevertheless, I think food industry need to develop a contingency plan, a scenario in dealing with emergency in more detail, especially with respect to COVID-19. In particular, need to focus on anticipating the possibility of disruption in production. For example, if some worker fall ill because of COVID-19, what must be done so that the industry can still be able to fulfill the demand or order? So this is very important. Or at the very least, the industry need to prepare plan to determine what needs to be done if something unexpected happen. One of them, the industry need to review the condition and explore the possibility of the supplier, including explore the possibility of diversifying a supplier. The industry need to start thinking about it, about how it will overcome production problem if it experience a lack of supply of raw material, lack of supply of certain ingredient, lack of supply of the cleaning and sanitizing agent, for example, from one of their main supplier. Okay? So this is more critical. The situation is more critical, especially for industries that have practiced timely inventory management, at which they usually do not maintain large amount of inventory. So delay in one ingredient, especially for a long period of time, will create some problem. So one of the lessons demonstrated by COVID-19 outbreak was the importance of industry to diversify supplier. The industry need to establish at least one or two secondary supplier for its raw material and ingredient. In this case, the industry need to protect the secondary supplier by ordering them regularly from time to time, so that if there is a problem with the primary supplier, the working relationship with the secondary supplier has already established and can be expanded and doesn't have to start up from zero. So this is a very important contingency plan, especially in the manufacturing sector. Lesson number five is that the food industry need to review the risk assessment associated with their HACCP plan, for example, and other food safety management system. In the risk assessment, the industry needs to start incorporating risk consideration related to COVID-19. In addition, since COVID-19 pandemic is also impacting the operational of the national food control system, that may result in less inspection and audit. So food industry has to be prepared for that, to be ready, because ultimately the responsibility in terms of food safety of product produced by the industry, and the responsible party is the industry itself. However, less inspection or lack of inspection and audit in some cases, coupled with the imbalanced supply and demand, is associated with increased incident of food fraud. This is something the food industry need to be aware of, need to be ready and prepared for the mitigation process. As we witness in several parts of the world, the food fraud is increasing during this pandemic. Lesson number 6 is related to training. The importance of training and education program for all staff and employee. This is very critical. Training and education on various issues of food safety, sanitation, worker safety including, are essential to ensure that people do their job properly, correctly, and safely, and they can respond properly as well if something needs to be changed. Considering that there is a lot of bad news, or even hoax or fake news about COVID-19 and food, the industry needs to provide the right information from the trusted parties to their employees, so that the employees have a good understanding and will be able to better respond to the emergency situation. Training is also essential to anticipate the absentee, so that cross-functionality among the employee can be done and should be anticipated because of the potential people getting sick. Training regarding the proper use of disinfectant and the proper method of disinfection are also very critical to be done. Number 7, the review of the general protocol and procedure. There is a need for the industry to review all of the general protocol and procedure. The primary focus of review is to ensure that COVID-19 virus remain out of the premises. The virus will enter food business premises only when an infected person enter or contaminated product or item brought in the premises. So the procedure for the driver, for example, for the staff delivery, for example, to food premises should be carefully reviewed, including protocol or procedure for personnel and all of their activities outside and inside and out, in and out of the premises. Protocol for visitors, guest arrangement, including food inspectors, should be reviewed to ensure that COVID-19 viruses do not enter the premises. This is very important one. Review procedure is also needed, especially where there is a changes or switching of the system to an online system, such as online ordering, online delivery, and so on. Number 8, lesson very important, is about the importance of risk communication. I just would like to illustrate some of the events occurring worldwide. In Bangladesh, for example, people are disseminating misinformation on social media about the safety of poultry meat and egg, for example. The information, the misinformation, the fake news mentioning that poultry meat and egg can transmit the coronavirus to human. So this is obviously not right, but this information can certainly cause some damage and also cause drop in demand of the poultry product. And this is not good for economy, but also not good for the food security as well. So this is things that need to be aware of. And just recently, an example is about the recent example about the importance of risk communication is about salmon, which is occurring last couple of days in Beijing market, China. The discovery of COVID-19 on the chopping board of a seller of imported salmon in Beijing main wholesale market, for example, is set to disrupt the demand of product in the global market as well. So this is very significant one. This is still being studied, but most likely it is caused by contamination from an infected food handler. As we all know that transmission in the seafood chain is not plausible unless there is a contamination from elsewhere at some stage. Actually, it is not very surprising that COVID-19 has been detected on food, considering how the infection is spread between humans, mainly via respiratory droplet. So if you have a salmon in front of you, then probably the surface of the salmon or the chopping board will be infected as well if you are infected. The incident actually underline how important food hygiene and personal hygiene is for the preventing transmission of the virus. But with the risk communication that we have now, this information is causing fear among the consumer, and it is said to disrupt the demand of the product in the global market. In response to this news, the US FDA, for example, this is the commissioner of US FDA mentioning that the FDA is aware of that report that China will begin testing food, particularly produce of seafood, for COVID-19. There is certainly no evidence of the transmission of COVID-19 through food, and there are no known or suspected cases linked to food. So this is to assure that actually most likely the source of the contamination is probably from the food handler. And also, actually, the China Center for Disease Control actually has said that it is unlikely that salmon carried the virus. However, the news has already spread and caused fear among the consumer. So we need to be careful in communicating risk, has to be transparent, obviously, but not to cause any unnecessary fear that may drive to food rejection and food wastage. Communication and consultation with health and food safety authorities is critical, and also consultation with communication specialists is necessary to avoid confusion and outrage. Number 9 is the importance of documentation. We need to ensure that all initiatives that the food industry has done, the training program that food industry has developed, changes of the procedure, for example, including the timing, is well documented, consisting all of the information important for the changes, such as who, how, when, what, and why some change or some initiative is being administered. This will be very useful for future use, for future evaluation, and also for potential of improvement and to be more ready in the future if a similar incident occur in the future. And finally, this is the final one. So I have 10. Finally, the lesson number 10 is for we are all food professionals. We have an important role to play in ensuring that food products are available, safe, nutritious, and of high quality for the consumer. Furthermore, not only as a food professional, but we are also a responsible member of the wider community. We need to always be careful, always protect ourselves and others by following the recommended precautionary principle that has been set by authoritative body so that we can protect the public health at large. So finally, wash your hand frequently, avoid crowd and keep your distance. Stay calm, stay healthy, stay enthusiastic and productive, obviously, producing and supplying a basic need for the population, which is a safe, nutritious, and high quality of food. And with that, I would like to close my presentation with thank you very much. And I will stop here. Thank you, Rose. Back to you.
Thank you, Papur. So I think we gonna have a question and answer session. There are a lot of explanation in the slide already answered to the question that sent to us on the live chat or even the register question that have been sent. Papu, there is a question just now on the China case on the salmon. There is the audience from, I think from Indonesia. He is actually saying the news about the Beijing frozen seafood, that your case that you have shared the example. Is there any clarification on this case that is related to the cold chain system, or is it about food safety measurement happening there? So anything you can share on the clarification that we should be aware of?
Thank you very much. Yes, I think as of now, the information is really limited. So it's still developing now, but from the theoretical understanding, it is not plausible actually that the common as an aquatic product, aquatic animal will develop coronavirus or COVID-19. So the plausible explanation is probably through the contamination of the food handler, or maybe at some point of their supply chain. So that's most likely. And now I think the authoritative body is studying very carefully to ensure that the supply chain related to salmon is remain intake and not being jeopardized. And we're still waiting for that. But again, from the theoretical standpoint, it is very highly unlikely that the salmon is a source of the infection itself. Furthermore, actually, if food is contaminated with viruses, it is very important for us to back to basic, understand the basic principle of handling food using a principle of good hygiene and also good sanitation. So with that, I think we will be able to minimize the risk associated with the contaminated product, because the virus actually is very fragile. It very easily can be inactivated by heat at about temperature of 70 degrees C, and also very easily inactivated by commonly used sanitizer in the industry, and also obviously with a detergent solution. So this is why hand washing and personal hygiene is very important. Thank you.
Again, we have to back to basic, even
yes.
to make everyone understand that COVID is not foodborne disease, but it can transmit through the food handling or the equipment that the virus can transmit, but not food itself to be the transmission. So I think many of you can see the slide and the evidence or the study that have been done by several of authorities that Dr. Poole has shared in his presentation, that there is not any confirm, there's no any confirm that the food transmit the COVID. So it is interesting to keep yourself and your peers, your colleague in mind that COVID is not foodborne disease type of virus. So next question, Dr. Poole, it is from Mr. Rafif Uttama Putra from Indonesia. He asks, what innovation should be done during this COVID period? Any type of innovation you may suggest to him?
Yes, I think, again, with respect to food and food safety, the science behind it is remain the same. I mean, the science of food safety is science-based, obviously. Food safety standard is science-based. So the standard, the safety criteria is there. It doesn't change because of the COVID-19. What changed is how people perform or practicing thing to achieve the safety standard. That need to be changed because now they can do it in in a close distance. For example, they have to do it in a distance distancing. Physical distancing is very important. So how can we achieve the safety standard that has been set by using, for example, less people, or by reducing the number of people who perform the task that is usually done. So that kind of innovation is necessary. That's why, for example, we can see now a lot of robotic, for example, the use of IT, the use of AI technology to try to solve the problem that, because now that problem cannot be done by people anymore, especially people in crowded. Several food industry, for example, like a slaughterhouse, and then also some of the market, when the people is there, basically shoulder to shoulder, it's too dense. We can see, a meat plant, for example, meat processing plant, for example, in the US, we hear that they have a problem related to COVID-19 because of the density of the people who are working there. So how can we do that? So if we have some idea about innovation, how to do it with less people, with less contact of the people is very important. Another thing is on the virus itself. For example, innovation regarding the detection of the virus so that we can easily detect the contaminated surface of the virus. Right now, we suspect that all of the surface are infected, but probably not. So, but we don't know about that. So again, the innovation is not directly related to the food itself, but more on the how to achieve different food safety standard, food safety objective differently now.
Yeah, thank you, doctor. So innovation can be done like what we are doing here. We try to bring in the digitalization with the Internet of Things to bring knowledge from Dr. Poole, who is in Jakarta, to share with us all around the world. I saw a lot of audience from Europe and Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia, and even from Australia. So that is thing that don't stay still, but keep innovating that to cope up with the new normal, I would say, right? So the next question, doctor, how you see the demand of the food imports into Indonesia to be back to the normal situation?
Yes, I think Indonesia is a large population, and the food industry is growing very significantly before, but now it's rather stagnant because of the COVID-19, but people basically cannot live without food. So this is a very important. So again, if we can innovate as how to do the trade, for example, in a safe way, effective way, I think the demand will grow, obviously. And in the future, in terms of the food, demand in Indonesia is very high, and the food industry is also growing very, in terms of the innovation is growing very dynamically. So I think, once the condition is favorable for trading, for establishing again the global supply chain will run effectively as well. What we need to do, in my opinion, is not to spread the false information, the false misconception about the association with COVID-19 and food. So this is very important, because at some cases, as I mentioned before, in a certain part of the world, this will cause a fear, and people will reject a certain food, which is actually perfectly good food, but they reject it, so that it becomes wasted, and we don't want to see that happening. Thank you.
So I would add to Dr. Pool that it is interesting on the news that you get in his slide sharing, whether it's about the salmon case or the chicken meat case in Bangladesh, which is the main chicken, main food in Bangladesh. But the news saying that the chicken meat was the source of transmission of COVID. This is totally wrong. So we all together should educate and have the right information on to the consumer, as we are the food and beverage producer. That I would say. And interestingly, if Indonesia come back to normal, you may have aware that Indonesia is number 4 in the rank of the world population. And from slide of Dr. Pool, you have to consider your vulnerable consumer, meaning that
yes,
how you understand your Indonesian consumer. The average age of Indonesian consumer is pretty different from my Thai. So Indonesia is about 27 years old, but while Thailand is already growing to be 40 years old, for we are stepping into the aging society, while Indonesia is still in the young generation country. So this is very interesting for the producer to understand your consumers better. Now come to the question regarding to the packaging, Prof. The packaging, there is a question they want to understand about how should the packaging for food and beverage adjust during this COVID or even ahead with the new normal? So how they should plan for their packaging, should adapt, or what is your suggestion?
Yes. First, I would like to come back to the statement that I made before, and this is also issued by the statement also issued by many food safety authorities, that actually, in terms of the risk associated with the COVID-19, food and food packaging is very low in terms of the risk. So this is the fact first. However, as we know, people, especially the consumer, usually have a certain concern about that, and we also see that people try to have some precautionary treatment in terms of the packaging material. So some people even probably let the food packaging stay for a while over there, and then maybe put in the sun, or even spray with disinfectant or things like that. So I think, if we can come up with innovation as how to develop packaging who are resistant, for example, to viruses, it is very important, yeah, for the consumer at least. And then also packaging material that are easily wipe out, cleans, for example, by water or in water or detergent or disinfectant. That will help also from the consumer perspective. But again, I would like to come back with my previous statement that actually in terms of the risk associated with COVID-19, food and food packaging is relatively low. So first we need to educate, obviously, but again, dealing with the consumer fear and concern is another thing. So both we can do it in simultaneous way, but again, principally actually the risk is actually relatively low. Yes.
Prof, what about there is a question on some of the fruit and vegetable. Normally our Asian people eat raw fruit and raw vegetable. Is that safe in this condition of pandemic? If it's possible food handler on to have COVID virus on the surface of the fruit and vegetable? How's your suggestion about how to handle fresh fruit and vegetable?
Yes, I think theoretically, yes, possible, because, food handler may have infection, and then they may, incidentally, for example, sneeze or cough, so that the virus particle will jump and stay at the surface of the fruit and vegetable. What we don't know right now is how long the virus, for example, can stay at the surface of the food, for example, including, for example, in the surface of salmon that we are talking about. We still don't know about that. However, by, doing the, again, back to basic, clean the fruit and vegetable before you eat with running water, and if you would like to have, for example, with a little bit of detergent, eatable detergent, if possible, that will help. WHO, for example, have instruction that washing fruit and vegetable with clean, edible, potable running water is enough. So, but again, if you worry much about that, and then you might like to add a little bit of detergent, some people do that. That will be okay. It will be even better. Thank you.
Yeah, and Codex has some guideline for the food industry on how they should cope with food safety, food sanitization in the COVID situation.
As I mentioned, that the Codex developed a standard food safety, and all of them are science-based. And because of the science has not changed, then the standard is not changed as well. So far, we believe that by implementing and following the standard that has been set, including the code of practice that has been set, good hygienic practices, for example, I think that will be enough in mitigating the risk associated with the COVID-19. Thank you.
All right, so doctor and ladies and gentlemen, we come to the last question for today's session. Definitely, we as Informa Markets will consider to bring all the panelists of the episode 1, 2, 3 to sit together to answer your question more. Come to the last part, doctor, as COVID will stay with us for a year or even more till the vaccine is ready. And can you tell the tips from your experience as scientist, vice chairman of Codex, the world experience that you have learned? How is the best practice the food and beverage industry, whether small, medium, micro enterprise or large enterprise, should implement and keep in mind in running their business?
Thank you. I think, not only for food industry, but also for any other industrial sector or any other organization, the principles are the same. basically, because we know how the COVID-19 are spreading. This is a person-to-person contact. Is very important. So we need to avoid that. That's why we need to have a physical distancing. Face covering is very effective in trying to reduce the risk of spreading, and also wearing masks and maintain the sanitation, the personal hygiene. Keep washing hand is very important, because the the gate of the virus to go in your body is through mouth, nose, and ear. So avoiding touching those things, mouth, nose, and ears, and eyes, and eyes, and make sure that you always have your hand clean, wash. And how to do that while we producing food, for example, that's the challenge. That's the innovation. That's the creativity that need to be developed. And for certain industry, will be different as compared to the other industry. But the principles are the same, very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Poor, for today's presentation and answer some of the questions. There are a lot of questions in related to the GMP practice, the new standard, or even the Codex guideline. So due to the time limitation, I would like to apologize, and in the near future, we will bring in those presentation by the expert, which we have a lot in pipeline. And for sure, in terms of understanding your consumer, in next episode from FI Asia 2020, we are bringing in Nova Market Insight to share with you on how COVID-19 changed the consumer lives in Asia. And definitely it will be in the same timing. On 23rd of June next week, we can see together. Stay tuned with us. We are bringing you more and more series of webinar today. Thank you, Dr. Pool, Teramakasi, and of course, thank you for the organization support to have webinar today, ADM and Fibersol. See us again in next webinar, and follow us for the presentation and the program in FI Asia website and Facebook. Thank you very much. สวัสดีค่ะ
Thank you very much.
Forever young, never strong, never brave. The memories like this never end. They don't fade away. So when I'm gone, or when I'm gone, I'll be right there, close to the sun. Keep holding on, keep holding on. I'll be right there, close to the sun. Shine through the rain, the ones who stood for something more, we won't forget your names. The tide is high, say goodbye, set it sail, and all those midnight secrets told, they come to the grave. So when I'm gone,